Well, cities across Ukraine have been hit by massive airstrikes as Russia deployed a record number of drones and fired more than a dozen missiles. Journalist Emmanuelle Chaze is in Kiev and she joins me now. Emmanuelle, thank you so much for joining us today. Now, we saw that more than 700 drones were launched alongside some ballistic missiles across the cities in Ukraine. How devastating have these strikes been?
Good evening, Girish. Well, indeed, this was actually a record strike, a record Russian strike against Ukraine. Over 740 drones. I don't know if you can imagine. Those are swarms of drones that were launched across the country. It was particularly targeting the western part of the country. The Lutsk city in the westernmost part of the country has been hit. It had been so far relatively spared from those attacks. Among the civilian population, there hasn't been as many casualties as we could have feared given the extent of the attack. There's several people injured, but there are also 5 people who were killed in separate attacks throughout the last 24 hours. There's around 40 people who have been injured. There is considerable damage done to infrastructure. So we would know about civilian infrastructure such as warehouses, commercial warehouses. But of course, the Ukrainian government would keep quiet on any damage caused on military infrastructure. What we know is that at least 718 drones have been either intercepted, rerouted, shot down by the Ukrainian air defense, as well as 7 out of the 13 missiles that were thrown at Ukraine. But this latest attack, a record attack, just shows how dire the situation is here on the ground and how much Ukraine needs additional air defense so as to secure its skies and protect its citizens.
Emmanuelle, how has it been like in Kiev, where you are at the moment?
Well, to tell you the truth, Girish, it has been a while since we've had a quiet night. The night before had been quiet, but even when that happens, given what we've been going through over the past few days, the past few weeks, this isn't even reassuring. You're just wondering what will come next. And indeed, sirens started at around 11 p.m. last night. Most of us don't sleep in our beds anymore. We would just go to a safe place. This can be the subway. This can be another type of basement. This can be in the middle of your flat, as far away from the windows as possible. So it's a state of constant stress, of constant worry that something must fall on you during the night. And of course, this is also part of the larger strategy by Russia to try and demoralize the population here.
Yes. Now, Ukraine, too, has launched its own strikes on Russian military targets. How significant were they?
Well, first off, it is significant to see that Ukraine doesn't just wait on its allies to provide it with additional equipment, military equipment, so as to defend itself. It is also trying to undermine Russia's effort on the Russian territory. And sometimes these occur thousands of kilometers away from the Ukrainian border. I'm thinking over the past few days of the strikes on ammunition depots and airfields near Vladivostok in the easternmost part of Russia. Yesterday, it was an ammunition depot near Moscow that was struck a few days before in the Black Sea, the harbor of Novorossiysk, where most of the remnants, should I say, of the Russian fleet is stationed, was also subjected to an attack with drones. So we see that Ukraine is also taking the initiative in that regard. And let's not forget that Ukraine in this war is actually providing 40% of the military equipment it is using it uses to defend itself. So there's their own drone productions. There's an expertise here in Ukraine that is, far more than that of its allies when it comes to drone warfare. And all those technologies are being developed with a sense of urgency because Ukraine needs it right now on the ground.
And how big a boost then in that vein is the announcement by Donald Trump that it will now begin delivering more military aid to Ukraine after it was paused just a few days ago?
Well, for Ukrainians, this has been an emotional roller coaster because just a few days ago, they've learned while they were experiencing literally the worst attack to date before last night, that Donald Trump wanted to hold the delivery of air defense equipment. And we know that, for example, the Patriot system, the American systems, they are not the only systems of air defense, but they are the most effective against Russian missiles, against those barrages of drones and missiles being thrown at Ukraine. So there was a deep sense of worry, and then there was that, that complete change of scenery with Donald Trump saying, well, now scenario, because Trump just said, well, now he wants to actually provide Ukraine with more air defense systems. So there's very much a feeling from Ukrainians that they are walking on eggshells when it comes to the relationship between Kyiv and Washington. They do not know who they can trust anymore. Of course, they would welcome any additional air defense coming their way. But the sense that this relationship between Washington and Kyiv has become more than ever transactional is very present here.
Yes, and finally, Emmanuelle, what are Ukrainians feeling about the fact that the U.S. president is more visibly frustrated with Vladimir Putin for failing to achieve peace? So are Ukrainians hopeful that this relationship between Trump and Putin will continue to worsen?
Ukrainians never believed for one moment that Vladimir Putin really wanted to achieve peace, simply because this has never been shown or hinted at here on the field. Remember, Vladimir Putin had announced unilaterally two very short-lived ceasefires that Russia didn't even respect, even if Moscow had announced it. And of course, on the ground, we see that Russian troops are still putting enormous pressure on different parts of the front line against the Ukrainian army. And given what's happening also in Ukrainian illegally occupied territories occupied by Russia, tortures against civilians who don't want to take Russian passports and various things like that. Just today, to give you an example, in Kherson region, a 1-year-old baby playing in a garden with his grandmother was hit by a Russian FPV, first-person view drone. The baby died, and this is a sad reality for Ukrainians. They just see day after day that Russia has no intention to strike a peace here, so they're not hopeful about anything coming from the Kremlin.
Okay, Emmanuelle Chaze, we really appreciate your reporting there from Kiev. Thank you so much and stay safe.
Thanks for having me.